I am so excited for this session and for just for everything. I've had so much fun, and we're just like 2 or 3 hours into this thing, so I can't even wait for the next few days. All right, so a couple things before we get started. First off, as I've been looking at our community as a whole, as ClickFunnels, funnel hackers, I feel like we're getting really, really, really good at building funnels and sales structures and all sorts of things like that. As I look at a lot of the funnels I see, what I feel like is lacking is the ability to actually sell and to do it in a cool way that helps serve people and inspires them and makes them want to follow you into your mass movement. And so what I wanted to talk about for the next hour or so is understanding the right way to sell and how to do it in a really cool, fun, exciting way. Now, before we do, I'm excited for this session for a couple reasons. One of them is about 5.5, 6 years ago, I was in a funk in my business and my life where we had grown a huge company. We had about 100 employees. The whole thing collapsed around me, and I was just like done and tired, and I wasn't inspired to create and to serve and do all the stuff that we do as entrepreneurs. And I kind of just wanted to give up. I remember, if you've read the .com Secrets book, I talked about this, waking up in the morning and like wishing that I had a boss so they would fire me so I could just go back to bed. Which is a horrible feeling, right? We shouldn't be feeling that way if we're here to inspire. And I had a close friend of mine who reached out to me during this dark period of my life and reignited the spark in this business. And what's interesting is that what got me excited again was this topic and this presentation. And it started with a couple phone calls, and he started talking to me about ideas that were just I hadn't thought about in a long time. It was how to create belief in your customers and how to get them excited and motivated, and how to do it through stories and all sorts of stuff. And him getting me refired up took me on a journey for the last 4 or 5 years that's brought me to where I'm today with all of you amazing people here. And I just wanted, last week I called him and I was like, man, I want you here at this event for a couple reasons. First off, if it wasn't for him reaching out to me during a dark time, none of us, I don't think, would be here. And he's someone who's just super inspiring to me and that's like honestly changed my life. And I think he's back here, and I just want to give him some credit before we get started. Dagan, are you here? This is Dagan Smith, everyone. Let's give him a huge round of applause. One of the coolest people ever, and one of the best marketing minds our industry's ever had, and just so grateful for him. Now, when we started this conversation, he started messaging me, and he was talking initially about movies and books and all these things and about how authors create belief and desire and all these things, and it like started to spark in me. I started geeking out and getting excited, and it took me on this huge journey for 4 or 5 years to what I'm going to present today. And it's stuff that I've talked about in little pieces in different spots. Some of you guys have heard pieces of this on my podcast or different events, things like that. This is the first time I've had a chance to kind of lay it out in one whole thing. And there's so much of the stuff came initially from thoughts and conversations Dagan and I had. And I just want to kind of dedicate this to him. The new Expert Secrets book you guys will see is actually dedicated to him because it was the foundation. Conversation with him is the foundation of where this book came from, and just grateful for him and excited. All right, so the topic that we're going to be talking about right now is how to create belief. It's interesting, like I used to think that our job as marketers was to sell people stuff, right? So I learned all these sales skills, I was reading all the sales books and like how to close and all these kind of things. And it got me to a spot, but I couldn't grow beyond that. Like it was stagnant and it wasn't inspiring. It didn't cause like the change in people's lives that I wanted to have, right? Selling is good because you make money, that's nice, right? But what's better is when you're doing it in a way that like causes beliefs to change in people, which causes them to move and causes them to change their lives as well. And that's like the fascinating, like the coolest part about this. So this whole session is about how to create belief. Okay, if you were to water down or take everything that marketing as a whole and like what is the goal and the purpose of it, it's this, is to create belief in the minds and the hearts of your customers. And if you do that, if they honestly believe that what you are saying is true, they're gonna follow you, that's it. So how do we create that belief and how do we do it in a way that it's really cool and fun? So a couple of core things I wanna, kind of conceptual things I wanna talk about first, and then we're gonna dig deeper into story. The first thing is this concept of the one thing. So I was at an event 4 or 5 years ago and listening to a bunch of great marketers. I was sitting in the audience, and Tim Ferriss was on stage. How many of you guys have ever seen Tim Ferriss before, heard him, read his books? Okay, he's awesome, right? And he's on stage, and somebody came up during the Q&A session and asked him, it's like, so Tim Ferriss, what's your day look like? And he kind of laughed. He said, you know what? I get asked that all the time, And people have asked if they come film a day in the life of Tim Ferriss. And he's like, I always tell them no. And do you want to know why? He said, most people wake up in the morning, they got this to-do list of 1,000 things, and they're doing thing after thing after thing after all these kind of things trying to get done, and they're busy and they're moving all the time. He's like, if you look at my life, it's not that way at all. He's like, I wake up in the morning, I drink some coffee or some tea, I sit there and I think, and then I read, then I go on a walk, and I'm thinking, and I'll do that for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks before I ever do anything. He said, what I'm doing though is I'm trying to spend that time thinking about not all the millions of dominoes I gotta knock down. I'm trying to identify what's the one huge domino that if I can knock that thing down, we'll knock down every other domino that's in the way or make the rest of them irrelevant. And when he said that, I had this like aha in my head. I was like, that's the key. And then a little while later, I was talking to my friend Perry Belcher, one of the owners at a digital marketer. And Perry was saying, he said, the interesting thing I found, he said, we went through all the offers we've created in the last 10 years. He said, anytime we asked somebody to believe more than one thing in our sales message, it was always a bomb. He said, if the core message got them to believe just one thing, those were our winners every single time. And anytime we made it more complex, started getting them to believe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things, the message just didn't work. And so I started thinking about that, and I started like realizing that if I want somebody to buy something from me, I got to get them to believe something. Like what's the one thing they have to believe? They believe this one thing, then they have to give me money. Like what is that thing? And so for all of you guys, it's going to be different. And we did an event for our Inner Circle members, probably 8 or 9 months ago. And I was talking about this, and I was planning on spending about 15 minutes on it. And as we started going deeper and deeper, we ended up spending about 3 hours trying to figure out this thing. And from that 3-hour session, popped out one sentence that was the key. Do you guys want to see the sentence? All right, this is what it is. This is the big domino statement. If I can make them believe that my new opportunity, we talked about this morning, is the key to whatever they desire most, and it's only attainable through my specific vehicle, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money. That's what we have to create for anything you're selling. If you can create that, that's the key. Now this seems really, really easy until you start doing it, and it's not. It takes a while. So I'm gonna show you guys a couple examples. So for my business, this is what my domino statement would look like. If I can get them to believe that funnels, this is my vehicle, is the key to their online business success and is only attainable through ClickFunnels, if they honestly believe that for me to be successful, I have to have a funnel, and the only way to have a funnel is ClickFunnels, if you honestly believe that, you have to give me money. There's no other, if you don't give me money, you're lying to yourself. Like that's the argument I want to have. Like if I can create something so true that if they believe that, they have to give me money or else they're lying to themselves. That's the key. Okay? If they do that, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money. Okay? So if you guys want to start thinking through your business, like can you create that statement for what it is you're selling? Okay, now as we started doing this in the Inner Circle, I started getting a bunch of them back from people, and they got the gist. They're like, cool, I got it, here it is. What's the next thing? And everyone's came in kind of like this. If I can get them to believe that cutting calories and exercising is the key to losing weight, and it's only attainable through my new weight loss course, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant, and they have to give me money. Now, is that a true statement? No, it's not true. Okay, if I convince someone you have to cut calories and exercise to lose weight, do you have to give me money? No, you can give anybody money. Everyone teaches this. There's a billion other people. You haven't done anything, right? All you've done is make them believe that, like, yeah, this thing as a whole is true, but not what you have is the only path to success. I have to get them to believe that this is the only path to success. And if I get them to believe that, then they're part of it. Then they're going to join, right? So this statement is not true for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it's not true because you are not in the prolific zone. Everyone's teaching how to cut calories. I'm right here in the middle. Not prolific. I can go to school and learn that. I can go on Google and learn that. I can go to, like, it's everything. It's free. Everyone's got that, right? So it's not prolific. Number two, this is not a new opportunity. Okay, I'm not presenting any kind of new opportunity. Number three, this is not in a blue ocean. Okay, so if you create a statement as you start doing this, I wish we had an hour we could just spend just workshopping and just doing this. But if what you have doesn't fit, if it's not a true statement, then these are the reasons why. So if I was in the weight loss space, I'm gonna transform this a little bit. So this is how I would do something. And I'm gonna tell a story about this a little while later. But there's a network marketing company called Prove It, and I helped them build out some of their initial messaging and sales funnels. And we got some improvers here in the audience. And so for that group, when we were kind of working through like how I was going to write the sales pitch and the messaging for them, this is what I came up with. Okay. If I can make them believe that getting their body into a state of ketosis, that's the vehicle, is the key to losing weight, and it's only attainable through drinking Prove its ketones, then all other objections and concerns become irrelevant and they have to give me money. Do you see how much stronger that is? If I can convince you that you have to be in ketosis to lose weight, that's the only vehicle that's gonna work for you. And the only way to do that is by drinking this magic drink. That's it. You have to give me money or else you're lying to yourself. Or you're not really desiring the end result. Okay? So that is the key. So I want all you guys to think for a second for yourself, what would this sentence be for you? What would the big domino statement be for you? Like, this is what you have to create before we can get into believe something, because this is what we have to get into believe. Okay? So tonight, this is your homework assignment. I want all of you guys to create a domino statement. And at first you can think it's to take 10 seconds, and an hour into it, you're gonna be like, gosh, this is harder than I thought. Turns out I'm selling an improvement offer. Turns out I am in a red ocean with everybody else. This statement makes all the stuff we talked about earlier have to happen. It can't not happen if you fit in the statement, okay? All right, so now after you have this big domino, then my next question I want you to think through is, why do you personally believe that's true? Okay, what was the experience that you had that made that true for you? Okay, I want to tell a story that'll kind of illustrate this. So after I did the sales presentation for Prove It, this is the company, this is their drink. So this is a drink, you drink it, put your body in a state of ketosis. Barely 10% of you guys know what that means. Everyone else is like, what is he talking about, right? So after I helped them write initial video that they've used to help grow the company, and it was kind of cool. And afterwards, Brian, who's the owner of the company, he said, hey, we're doing a big event out in, I think it was in Vegas. And he's like, can you come and speak to the leadership team about like how they can use this to help grow the company? And I was like, okay, that'd be kind of fun. So I fly out there to Vegas, and I get there and I land and I'm walking to the hotel, and what I see, and I love network marketers, but I'm gonna tease you guys all for a little bit for those who are in that profession. I walk in the hallways, I'm walking to go find Brian, and I'm walking down the hall, and I see all these people, and all of them are wearing t-shirts that say, ketones are greater than glucose. Okay, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And I wrote the pitch for this thing, okay. And they're all walking, and they're rocking around, and they're pouncing on people, and like, hey, you need to get your body in ketosis, and like, you need to drink this, and they're pouncing on all these people. And I was like, So I get there and walking through this thing, and I'm watching this process happen, you know, and I get to the hotel room, and I find Brian, and I was like, hey man, how's it going? And we were talking, and I said, so what do you want me to talk about tonight at the thing? He's like, oh, whatever you want to talk about, man, it's cool. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know, okay, give me some direction, like, do you have anything in mind? He's like, no, whatever you think will be good. I'm like, okay, well, what time are we on? He's like, oh crap, it started like 10 minutes ago. I'm like right now? He's like, yeah, we gotta go. So he jumps up and we start, and we're filming this, so I have footage. You guys will see it when you see Funnel Hacker TV. We film this whole thing. And so he's running the elevator. I'm like, well, what am I talking about? He's like, whatever you want, man, don't worry about it. We come in this room, and there's a room of 100 of the top leaders in the company, and they're all sitting there like going crazy excited. And Brian walks in, and he walks to the front, grabs the microphone, and introduces me, and then sets it down. And I'm in the back with my backpack and flip-flops on, and I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. So I kind of walk to the front, and I get up there, and I turn around, I look out in this audience, and I look in their eyes, and it hit me what they needed to hear. And I looked out there, and I said, okay, I've been watching you guys for the last hours. I'm walking through the lobby. And what's interesting is that for every one of the people in this group, and I'm gonna tell the story about them, and I'm kind of picking on them a little bit, but this is true for all of you guys, so take this personal. This is the point of it. So I said that what's happening is all you guys are going, and you're doing this wrong. And I said, if you look at yourselves, this was you, I don't know, 6 months ago, a year ago, and you were just a normal dude, happy as can be, going on your normal life, doing whatever you were doing, and all of a sudden somebody came to you, and something happened, right? I don't know if somebody gave you this stuff, you drank it, you liked it, or some process happened, something happened that gave you this epiphany where you're like, I should be drinking this stuff, right? And for you, I want you to plug in whatever your business is, right? You get some of you guys in weight loss, finance, like whatever it was for you, something happened, some experience happened in your life, and all of a sudden you're like, and you had this epiphany, right? And this epiphany happened, and after you had this epiphany, you got excited. You're like, this is so cool. I remember like when I had my epiphany about funnels, I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. And I started geeking out, right? And so I go on this huge journey over here. I go on this journey. I'm over here, and I'm studying, and I'm learning, and I'm doing the worst thing that marketers could ever do is we start geeking out on the topic, right? So I'll put glasses on this person because they're like totally geeked out, right? And you start studying all the math behind it and the science and the reasons why, and now this is better than that, and that, you like all this stuff. You get everything, right? And you start storing it away in this cloud. And I have a friend, her name's Kim Klaver. She wrote a book called If Your Product's So Great, How Come Nobody Will Ever Buy It? And one of the chapters is called Technobabble. And she says, this is the reason why most people can't sell. They learn all this stuff, all these things. They're studying the back and they're like, all the ingredients and the reason, the science, and they're so excited by this thing, right? And then they go and they're in a hotel and they see like their prospect walking past and like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my chance. Like I have a chance to sell this person. We're going to change their whole life. And the person comes out and then they pounce on the person, right? They pounce on them. They start spewing out all this technobabble. And they're like, look, you need to be drinking this stuff because I don't know if you know, but ketones are greater than glucose. And if you had beta hydroxybutyrate salts in your body, you'd be melting fat off and da-da-da. And they start doing all this stuff. And the poor prospect is like getting this technobabble just shot at him. And they're like, God, like, I don't know what to do, right? And then they run away. And they're like, oh, nobody will buy my stuff, right? Okay, now this is how most of us are selling. Okay, most of you guys, this is the problem, is that you're getting stuck in the technobabble. Okay, now the technobabble is not what got you to buy. It's not what's going to get them to buy. You were back here and something happened. You had an emotional experience. They got you excited. Then you went on a journey over here and then logically, can you guys see this over here? Oh, we got the camera, good. And then logically, you convince yourself this is the coolest thing in the world. But then you meet this prospect and you try to jam logic down their throat to sell them, and that's not how you sell anybody anything, okay? The way you sell stuff is to stop and forget who you are right now, and you've got to come backwards on this journey and come back here and remember, what was it that gave you this epiphany? Because that's the key. If you can remember that piece, that's how you sell somebody, okay? It's not by giving them all this technobabble. This is what kills all your sales. It's the epiphany, the story that you tell to get somebody to believe, okay? So I want you to think back for your product. What was it? Why did you believe that domino statement? What was the experience you had? You didn't wake up one day and you wanted to be teaching fitness or finance or gardening or whatever your thing is. You just wake up one day, I want to do this. Like something happened, and we have to remember that experience. So when I wrote the pitch for this company, I'm not a health guru, as you can probably tell, but I like it, right? And Brian had actually written a script for this company ahead of time, and he sent it to me. He was like, hey man, here's a script. Can you look at it and give me your feedback? And I was like reading it, I was like, I'm like, it's not very good. He had all this technobabble. He was dropping all these like fancy words. And Brian's been a friend for a long time, so I'm sitting in bed reading his script, trying to edit it for him. I'm like, this is not even any good. So I just highlighted the whole thing and deleted it. I was like, I'm just going to write this thing from scratch. And so as I sat there, I'm like, okay, well, I've heard of this thing called ketosis. Like, what was it? Like, what gave me the epiphany that this was a cool thing to do? And I started thinking back, and I remembered about a year and a half earlier, I was at a seminar, and that night I went to a dinner with one of my friends. His name's Aaron Lilly. And we go out to eat, and I'm ordering like all sorts of good food. And Aaron ordered chicken with a side of butter. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, it's really good. You dip your chicken in butter, and then you eat it. And I was like, aren't you going to die? Like, isn't that really bad for you? I don't know. My mom always didn't let me have butter. I don't know. And he was like, no, this is really, really good. And I was like, well, explain to me. It doesn't make sense to me. He said, okay. He's like, my body, and he's like ripped and looked awesome. And I was like, I'd like to look like you. Maybe I should just get some butter. And he started explaining ketosis. He said, if you think about carbs are like kindlings. If you take a bunch of kindling, you throw it on a fire, what happens? I was like, flames go up and then they go back down. He's like, yeah. So you get energy for like 20 seconds and then you're shot, right? He's like, that's happens when you eat Cheerios for breakfast. You're like, and then it's gone, right? Same with Frosted Flakes. Like you're trying to be Tony the Tiger and like 10 seconds later it's gone, right? And he's like, no, if you look at protein is like a log. You throw that on fire and it burns a little bit longer, but eventually it's still gonna burn out. And he's like, if you get your body's burning fat, it's like putting coal on the fire, and the coal is like, it'll if you catch that on fire, it'll stay warm all the time. He's like, I've trained my body to burn fats, and so because of that, like I can eat this stuff all day long, and I never gain weight, and I feel awesome, and it was amazing. And so he told me that, and I remember that, like that was what gave me the epiphany. So when I sat down that night at 2 a.m. to write the script for Prove It, all I did is I told a story. If anybody, who's ever seen that video? They call inside the company the campfire video, and I have a little cartoon video of me talking about how the difference, how you have a campfire. And it's like throwing carbs, like throwing kindling on the fire, and protein and coal. And I just told that story in a video. They took that video, they went out, and within the first 6 months of using that video, everyone in the company puts on their phones, and they show people, and then they sign them up. Like, that's all they do. The first 6 months, the company did $20 million in sales, and I think this year they're on track to like $250 million or more from that one Epiphany Bridge story. Okay? Is that cool? and a whole bunch of amazing people who are out spreading the message. But that was the key. It's remembering, if I come back and spew all the technobabble, nobody's gonna buy your thing. And this is where most of you guys are selling from. So the key is to stop and step back and remember, what was the epiphany that you had, okay? And so that's the kind of next slide here is, what was the origin story? Like, what was the thing that made you believe that thing, okay? All right, now to kind of go a little bit deeper with this, the next problem that most of you guys are gonna have is you're gonna start telling that story, but then the problem is you're still gonna slip back into this technobabble, right? For some reason, we love these words, they feel so smart, our status goes up every time we say them, and we're like, oh, well, I know these big words. How many of you guys know what beta hydroxybutyrate salts are? Because I do. That guy knows. That's how cool I am, right? And so we always want to spew this stuff out, right? And so I found anytime you do a sales message, you have to stop yourself from using technobabble. And sometimes you feel like I have to use it because like it's a big word and how do I make it simple? So I learned a little trick and I call these kind of like bridges, okay? And what a kind of like bridge is every time I'm giving a message and I hit a word that's kind of like technobabble, I have to stop. Because if I don't stop, if I say a technobabble word and I keep moving, everyone's like, what did he just say? And they get stuck and they're like, and then the whole sale's gone, right? So every time I hit a word that's a big confusing word or using any kind of technobabble, I have to stop and I say, it's kind of like, and I liken it to something they understand. So when I wrote the pitch for Prove It, ketones is a word that most people don't know. So as soon as I said ketones, I'm like, da-da-da-da-da, ketones. I'm like, it's kind of like a million motivational speakers running through your body. I'm like, oh, cool. I get that, right? Okay, I talk about how it gives you energy. I'm like, yeah, it gives you really, really cool energy. It's kind of like, if you guys ever played that game Pac-Man, you know when Pac-Man the whole time is like running away from the ghosts, but every once in a while he eats those power pellets and then like he gets on and then he's like starts chasing the ghosts and eating them. Like that's what it feels like. It's kind of like that. Okay, so kind of like, I use these, how many of you guys have heard me say at least 3,000 kind of likes in the last 12 hours, 6 hours, right? Every time I say any word that I'm like, somebody might not understand that, I stop and I'm like, oh, it's kind of like this. And then they're like, oh, cool. Okay, so this is the key. Like, whenever you're telling a story, the kind of like bridge is the thing that's going to save you from technobabble, because most of you guys are going to want to keep slipping back there and getting back there over and over again. And it's the key to breaking that. Okay? All right. Okay, so the next level of epiphany bridges. So this is something that I learned from Dagan, and it's the coolest thing, is part of telling the story is telling the story. But have you ever noticed that sometimes you'll try to tell someone a story, and you're like, okay, this is the deal. And you start telling them what happened, and you're so excited, and you explain it to them, and then they're like, oh, wow, that sounds cool. And you're like, no, like, dude, and you retell the whole story again, and they're like, no, I heard you. It's cool, man. And you're like, no, like, you had to be there. If you'd have been there, you would have got it, right? Who's ever said that before? Okay? It's frustrating, right? And you think about it, the reason why is because like the person didn't have the same experience you do. And so what you have to understand, I learned this piece of it from Tony Robbins. When I was at his event, he talked a lot about state and state control, and he may talk about that in 2 days from now when Tony's here, which is exciting. But if I want somebody to have the same epiphany that I had, I can't just tell it to them. I can't just like give it to them like, here's this epiphany I had, and shove it down their throat, because they're not going to get it. What I have to do is I have to get them in the same state that I was in, right? So here's the state that I was in when I had this epiphany. I have to get them into that same state. And if I do that, then they'll have the same epiphany that I had. Okay, so let me kind of explain that a little deeper. Actually, I'm going to illustrate this I think it'll make more sense. So if you think about good books, like your best authors that write amazing books, right? They won't just like tell a story like they walk into a scene and they're like, hey, this is what happened, and then it kind of ends, right? Like they'll spend 10 or 20 or 30 pages like setting up the scene and how they felt and the lights and the sounds and everything, so that you get in the same state as the character. So when you're like, then the character has this experience, you're like, whoa, I felt that, right? And so good authors will do a good job of that. Film is amazing, because in film they can do so much more than we can do typically when we're just speaking like this, right? And this is a film, about the time that I was going through this deep, dark spot in my life, and Dagan and I were talking about this, and he kept saying, he's like, the key to stories, you have to get them to feel. And I remember he's like, have you ever seen the movie, the new X-Men movie that's out at the time? And he's like, it's the one where they were all little kids. I was like, yeah. He's like, do you remember that scene? And he said, there was this scene where Magneto, he has a little Magneto who becomes the bad guy in the future movies. He's a little kid, and they're taking him and his family into this Nazi concentration camp. And as they're pulling him in, they see the fences, the metal fences kind of move. And the Nazis are like, okay, there's something wrong with this kid. And so they bring him into a private room, right? And in that room, they're trying to get him, they want to see what his powers are and so they can understand him so they can use them, right? And so in this scene, they have him and they're trying to get him to move a coin on a desk and trying to get him to move. And then they also bring in his mom. And they're telling him, like, you need to move this coin. And so he's trying to move the coin, and he can't quite move it. And so finally the Nazi guy stands up, shoots his mom falls dead. And then all of a sudden, you see for a second where he looks away at his mom, and he comes back with like this look of fear and like just scared. He was just scared. And all of a sudden, that fear turns into like anger and rage. And you watch the scene where he just destroys the entire room. I'm gonna show you guys the scene really quick because I want you, as you're watching this, to notice how you feel. Okay, good film, good movies they do such a good job of getting us to feel. And I want you guys to see this because I can explain how we can model that in our storytelling. So let me show you guys this clip real quick.
Alles ist gut. Alles ist gut. Alles ist gut.
3.
Ja, wunderbar. Rottersot.
You guys able to feel that a bit? Isn't that amazing? Now, if Magneto was like a lot of us telling stories, 20 years later, he'd be like, yeah, so when I was a kid, I was in a Nazi concentration camp, and they wanted me to move a coin, and I couldn't, so they shot my mom, and that sucked. That's how a lot of you guys tell your stories. Okay? I've heard it. And I get, Russell, why is my funnel converting? Serious? Like, I don't know. If we want them to have the same epiphany we had, we have to get them into the same state that we were in when we had that epiphany. We do that by getting people to feel what we felt. So when I'm telling a story, instead of just saying, hey, when I got started in this business, I wanted to make some money, and so I started making these potato gun things, and I made funnels, and I made a bunch of money. It was really, really cool. Nobody feels that. Nobody's going to experience what you experience. I'm going to come back and remember the pain, and remember how I felt, and then I explain it. So when I'm explaining something like this, I'll just make a story off the top of my head. I would say something like, it was my senior year in college. I was sitting there in an auditorium with about 1,000 of my peers who were all about to graduate, and I remember sitting there looking around and realizing that I hadn't learned anything in school. Like, I had nothing that I was going to go out there. I'm looking around, everyone's celebrating, they're partying, and they're having all this fun. And I was like, do you guys not realize? And I remember feeling this like pit in my stomach, and it almost felt like a heart attack, but it was deeper. It was like down here, and I felt like the stabbing that kept, and I was like, how in the world are we supposed to go and like actually go out there in the real world? And like, I have no skills that are actually marketable. And I remember feeling this weight on my back, because I had just gotten married earlier that year. I was like, how am I supposed to support my wife? And if we want kids in the future? And this weight kept getting heavier and heavier. And the more that I thought about it, the more I was just like, God, like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. How many of you guys, as I was explaining that story, felt pressure on your shoulders, felt pain, you felt some of those things, right? That's actually a true story. It was really painful. Thank heavens for funnels. But if you tell a story that way and you explain how you felt and the intro, all the stuff that's happening, the dialogue in your head, and you get, just like an author when they're writing a book, and you get people in that state, when you come and you tell this story, you're not telling them about, here's the epiphany I had. You tell them that story, and then they have the epiphany. Okay, last year at this event, before Marcus Lamona spoke, we had a 30-minute window where I had a chance to meet him. We wrote that in the contract, okay? It's my trick to hang out with cool people. I pay him a bunch of money, you get a 30-minute contract before they speak on stage, right? So we're sitting there in this meeting, we're talking and stuff, and he's like, and he kind of walked by the window, he came and he's like, so what do you guys do again? We're like, oh, we have this thing called ClickFunnels, and it builds websites. He's like, why is everyone in the room so excited then? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you have a website built, people are jumping and screaming, like everyone's like, I don't understand what you guys are doing. And I'm like, okay. And so all of a sudden I instantly slipped into technobabble and I tried to explain a sales funnel and the upsells and all this stuff. And he was like, I don't get it. Why are they so excited? And I stopped and I was like, okay, well, and I tried to really quickly remember like, well, why am I so excited by this? Why is everyone in the room excited? And so I kind of explained a story about how funnels, what they are and how they work. And he's listening, he said, okay. He's like, well, how would this work for Camping World? So I'm like, well, I'd probably do this. He's like, well, how would this work for Sweet Pete's? How would this work? And he asked me 3 or 4 companies, and he stopped and he's like, every company needs a funnel. I was like, yeah. Yes, they do. But I didn't tell him, hey, Marcus, every company needs a funnel. He was like, okay, whatever. And he had the epiphany. He said, every company needs a funnel. Do you want to be on my show? Yes, I do. And 6 months later, we're on the show. But it's because I didn't force this epiphany out his thing. I explained it through story, and he had the epiphany. If you guys learn nothing else from this weekend, this is probably the most valuable thing I can give you. When you understand this is how you sell. It's not about sweet headlines and like copywriting tricks and secrets, all sorts of stuff. It's just remembering what got you to believe what you do. There's a reason why you're so passionate about what you do. There's a reason why you flew around the world to be here, to hang out with all of us talking about funnels and all these things, because there's something that you experienced, and you have to remember what that was, and that's the story you got to tell. Okay, it's not my story, it's your story. And if you remember what that was and why you cared about it, and you get really good at sharing that, that's what gets people to come over here. That's what gets people to follow your mass movement. That's what gets people to believe in you, because you believe in it. Okay, do any of you guys have any doubt that I believe my message 100%? Okay? I tell the story over and over and over again because I know that if you guys believe that I believe, you're going to come. But it's all part of this, okay? All right, so that's the Epiphany Bridge right here. Now, after we kind of started figuring these things out and really understanding, like simplifying the kind of like bridges and how to get people in state, the next question is like, well, is there structure? Like, how can I replicate this over and over again? So some stories aren't amazing and some stories are big failures. Like, how do I replicate this? And about 5 years ago, same time Dagan and I started hanging out and talking again, we would decide to do this workshop. And at the time, he had gotten me onto this course by 2 guys, Michael Haig and Chris Vogler. It was called The Hero's 2 Journeys. And he's like, dude, you gotta listen to this. I was listening to it, and he was, and we were going back and forth, and like, this stuff is amazing. And these guys are Hollywood screenwriters and are consultants. And so they go in this course, they're talking about how, like, if you look at every Hollywood movie from the beginning of time till now, almost every successful movie follows the exact same pattern. He said, you can look at like the screenplay of Titanic and the screenplay from any other movie you can think of, like Star Wars, right? And if you flip through them, you'll see that like on the same page in both of them is when this happens to the hero. On the same page is what this happens and this happens. And like the whole thing is the same storylines. And so Dagan and I asked if we can get Michael Haig to come speak, and he came and he spoke for like 6 hours at our event all about story and the hero's 2 journeys. And it was like the coolest thing in the world. But I had no idea like how to get it to work for like what I do, because it was really so big and complex. And I spent the next 4.5, 5 years trying to figure this out. And I feel like in the last 6 to 8 months or so, like I've really kind of figured it out. And so I want to do right now for the next, like about 25 minutes left. I want to go through the hero's 2 journeys. First off, so you understand the framework of how good stories are told. And then from there, I'm going to show you guys not a compressed version, but a simple way to tell the hero's 2 journeys for your Epiphany Bridge. And when you understand the hierarchy of how the hero's 2 journey works, along with what I'm going to give you guys at the end of this, it's going to make your storytelling process so simple and so easy. All right, so this right here, after listening to Michael Haig and going through his books and his courses, for me, I'm very visual. I sketched it out. I'm like, okay, this is it. And it took me a long time to figure this whole thing. I sketched it all out, and that is the map of the hero's 2 journeys. If you go through all his stuff, it all boils down to that picture right there. Like, that's everything you need to understand. So I'm going to kind of walk you guys piece by piece so you understand it. Okay, now one thing Michael said, he said that all stories are simple at their core. Okay, he said you can make it more complex and they can go from, a 30-second story to like a 4 or 5 hour movie, but at its essence, they're very simple. He said that every story's got a couple things. First off, there are 3 core things to every story. There's a character. That character has some desire, something that they want. And then on the path, on the journey of them to get that thing, they run into some kind of conflict. Okay? what's interesting is that most of us, a big mistake we make in our stories is we talk about the desire we have when we're trying to create emotion in our audience by like, oh, I got this new car, and we're trying to create desire there, but emotion is not created by the desire. Emotion is created by the conflict that's on the path to desire, okay? It's the conflict that makes it interesting, okay? So again, every hero's got a character, desire, and conflict. And Michael Haig, when he teaches about this, he says the most simple form is you look like Red Riding Hood. Okay, Little Red Riding Hood is a character. She had a desire. She wanted to take cookies to her grandma. And the conflict is that on the path to give her grandma cookies, she ran into a big bad wolf. That's the story. That's it. Those are the three core things of a story. Okay? Now, as we dig deeper into this, the next step is we have to care about the character. Okay? The character, the hero, whatever you want to call it, we have to care about them. Have you guys ever watched a movie before where the whole movie happens and the character dies and you're like, well, I don't really like him that much anyway? You guys ever had that before? Come on, a couple of you guys have. If movies don't do a good job of the character development initially, then it destroys the whole movie because nobody cares about the character at the end. So usually the first 10% of every single movie, the goal is to build a relationship with the hero. Okay, now, what Michael Haig said, there's 5 ways that in Hollywood they try to build relationships with the character. And a good character usually has 2 of these 5 things. So first thing, the character needs to be, again, 2 of these 5 things. So they can be a victim, okay, they could be in jeopardy, they need to be really, really likable, they can be funny, or they can be powerful. So think about any of the movies that you guys love, the characters in those movies, at least 2 of those 5 things are there. Okay, and the first 10% of the movie is all about helping you to feel those things so that when the character embarks on their journey, you actually care. Okay? Now, the other side is that each of these characters have a desire of what they want. Okay? Now, the desires are usually one of 4 things. When they want to win something, they're going on this journey because they want to win a prize. Okay? Or they're going on this journey because they need to retrieve something and bring it back. Or they are going on a journey to escape something bad. Or they're going somewhere to stop something. Okay, these are the 4 desires that are typically in most every movie. One of those 4 things. Okay, so if you look at this, if you look at the path, right, the first 10% of every movie is building the relationship with the character, and about the 10% mark in every single movie is where the character actually leaves on a journey. If you watch every movie, they start in a spot, but they're physically leaving where they're at and going on a journey. Okay, Frodo had to leave the Shire to go take the ring to Mordor, right? Think about every movie, they physically leave where they're at and they're going on this journey. Okay, now typically there's a journey, we call it the journey of achievement. It's the top arc here in the picture. The journey of achievement. This is the journey that the character's aware of. Like, I'm going over here to go get that thing or go do that thing. Okay, the journey of achievement. And this is the journey that all of the listeners and the viewers of the show are very, very aware of. It's like, this is where we're going. That's the process. This is what we're trying to achieve, right? The journey of achievement. Okay, now the second journey is this one underneath. This is, again, he calls it the hero's 2 journeys. The second journey is the journey of transformation. Now what's interesting is usually during the first 10%, when you have the backstory with the character, you're learning about the character and you're learning about their identity, who they believe they are when they're leaving on this journey, right? The things that are important to them, things that hold true. So they go on this journey and they're trying to accomplish something, but in the process, if the story's right, they're not just going to accomplish something, they're going to transform as a person. Okay, and if you look at the transformation, what happens is they're going from their old belief system to a new belief. And this is the actual journey that we all care about. This is the one that makes us care about the movie long term. Okay, so if you look at this, at the bottom there, it's the transformation from their identity, who they think they are, to who they're going to become. So that's the hero's 2 journeys. Now you could plug this into any movie, but I'm going to share one of my favorite movies with you because it's one that I love to watch with my kids. How many of you guys have seen the movie Cars? All right, so I'm going to walk you guys through how Cars fits into this because it's a fun one and it works with most of them, okay? All right, so if you look at this from Lightning McQueen, right? So Lightning McQueen is the character. At the very beginning of the movie, the movie starts and he's on this racetrack and we know that he's got this desire to win the Piston Cup. And so he's going on this race, everything's happening, and you learn a lot about him, right? You learn that he's powerful. You learn that he's funny. This chow and like making, so he's powerful, he's funny, and everyone likes him, right? Everything's happening. And then at the end of it, the opening scene, they tie and they're like, hey, you didn't win the Piston Cup, but nobody did. So we're going to go on this journey where you have to do another race. And if you win that, you're going to be part of it. Now, before Lightning McQueen goes on this journey, something really interesting happens. okay? It's after he said bye to everybody, and you see a couple things. You see that he works, or his sponsor's Rusty's, and he's kind of embarrassed, like, oh, it's Rusty's, and it's like, it's kind of embarrassing. I want to be with these guys, like they're way cooler, and like this kind of, with Dynaco, because Dynaco's like all the cool cars. So you see this like insecurity he has, which makes us bond with him as a character. And then he pulls into to Mac, and he gets on the phone with his agent. He's like, hey man, and the agent's like, hey, I didn't see your race, but I heard it was great. And you find out really quick that Lightning McQueen doesn't have any friends. His agent asks him, like, how many tickets do you want for the big race? He's like, oh, well, are you going to come there? He's like, I don't know if I'm going to be there, but he's like, okay, well, I got tickets for your friends. Let me know who they're going to be. He's like, okay. And you find out, like, he doesn't really have any friends. So instantly, like, we have this rapport with Lightning McQueen because we see the powerful, we see the strong, we see all these different sides of him, and so we care about him, right? So then he jumps in Mac, the truck, and he goes on this journey. He physically leaves the location and goes on this journey, right? And so he's going in the back of the car on this path to get what he wants, and then what happens? Conflict arises, right? Mac, the car, falls asleep, the back pops out, he wakes up almost in a wreck, and he starts going crazy, lands in Radiator Springs, and he gets caught, they put him in jail, they put a boot on him, and all these people he meets, and he's trying to get this thing, like he has this desire, like I need to get here to win the Piston Cup, but I can't because I have to do these things, like you have to rebuild the road, you have to do this, all these things he has to do. And every time he tries to escape, he can't. He keeps pulling back in, and he's going, like the entire movie, he's trying to achieve this thing, and we keep hearing about this journey of achievement that he wants to get, right? Over and over and over again. Now during this process, as he's doing that, all these things are happening to him as a character that makes us interested. All these experiences, all these things happen. And finally, at the end of the movie, he's able to leave Radiator Springs, and he gets to California to go and race for the Piston Cup. And he goes out there and he starts racing, and at first he's racing, and his heart's just not, he's like, oh, like, I want to win this, but like I miss all my friends I just made. All these things are happening. He's out there racing, and towards the end of the scene, all his friends from Radiator Springs come, Doc and everybody, and they help him in the race. And he's going through this race, and he's getting down to the very, very end, and they've got like one lap left, and he's winning, and he's going, and he realizes he's about to win the Piston Cup. Like the journey of achievement, he's about to get it. The entire movie, we're all so excited. He's going to get this thing. Right? We've been following him on this whole journey for 2 hours. We're so excited for him to win this thing. And then what happens? Okay, Chick Hicks, who's been number 2 behind the King for all these years, is like, well, I'm not going to lose to the King again. So he goes and he rams the King, and the King, his car flips out of control. Boom, 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 and this just gets destroyed. Lightning McQueen's running. He's like, I'm about to achieve this thing I've been dreaming about my entire life. And all of a sudden he looks up in the scoreboard, and he sees the King's car smashed on the sideways. And he's like, huh. And all of a sudden, this is where we get to learn about who Lightning McQueen has become. What happens is he slams on his brakes, comes right to the finish line and stops. And then Chick Hicks flies past, wins the race. Lightning McQueen backs up. He drives over to the King. He gets behind the King, and he starts pushing him. And he pushes him all the way to the finish line. And as he's pushing him, the King says, rookie, what are you doing? He says, don't you understand? You just gave away the Piston Cup. So this is the journey you've been trying to achieve your whole life. You just gave it away. He says, you know what? An old race car once told me, he said, all this is an empty cup. There'll be other years. This one's about you. And he pushes him through the end. And what we see, what's so cool, is even though Lightning McQueen never achieved what he was trying to do, the first journey never happened. The second journey of transformation did happen. That's why we love that movie. Okay? And so even though in your stories, the hero does not have to achieve the end result. Half my stories, I never actually finished the thing, right? Like, it's the transformation that we care about. Like, who did you actually become during this journey? That's what we care about, okay? And so that's the hero's 2 journeys. Is that pretty cool, you guys? All right, cool. Now what I want to do is I want to show you guys how do we take that? Because after Michael Hake taught us that, I was like, oh, this is so cool. How do I do that with what I'm doing? Like there's so many layers and complexity. And I'm like, how do I simplify that? And so for years, like literally over 4 years, I was trying to figure some things out. And I want to show you guys what we come up with. And we call this, inside the inner circle, we call this the Epiphany Bridge script. Basically, the inner circle is the ones we've been testing all these cool ideas on. And it's been amazing over the last 6 to 8 months as we've been doing this, as I've been doing it inside of our business. A lot of you guys probably don't even know what's happening. And the results have been amazing. As I've been watching inner circle members do it, like the results have been just amazing, company after company after company. So this is the script. And this is how it works, okay? Now, it's very, very similar the hero's true journey was broken in a way that we can tell stories very fast, okay? So it starts over here with the backstory. This is the first part of where you tell good stories, right? The backstory. We got to come back over here. Don't start over here in technobabble land. Come back here, like, what was the thing that got you in? You start telling this backstory. Now, the goal of the backstory is to get rapport with your audience so they actually care if you achieve the thing at the end. If they don't have rapport with you, they're not going to listen, okay? There's a reason why I tell stupid stories all the time, because it builds rapport, right? So they have the backstory. Now, after you introduce the backstory and you talk about the desire of where you want to go, now there's two things we have to share with our audience. Number one are our external desires. Now, these are the ones that most of you guys are comfortable with, like, I want to lose weight. Oh, I want to make money. Oh, I want to do whatever, right? And these are the ones that most people feel comfortable sharing because it's like the surface level, whatever, right? It's the journey of transformation or of achievement. Like, oh yeah, I want that. I want to achieve that. And so you talk about in the story, like, yeah, I wanted to achieve this. But then you have to stop. And the second thing you have to share are your internal desires. Okay, now, internal desires are the things that most of us don't typically ever share. We think them, we feel them, but we don't ever talk about it. And so as soon as you start sharing your internal desires, this is when people will relate to you because, like, man, I can't believe you said that. Like, that's how I feel. I don't ever talk about that with anybody. But I share that. And so to get to the internal desire, a lot of times you'll say, here's the external desire. I want to make a lot of money. And to get to the internal, you usually ask why, about 7 or 8 times. Well, why do you want to make a bunch of money? Well, I want to make a bunch of money because I never had money before. I think it'd be kind of cool. Okay, well, why do you want that? Well, I just got married and it'd be cool to be able to support my wife. I want to have kids someday. Okay, cool. Why do you want to do that? Well, my parents growing up were good supporters and I want to be like them. Well, why is that? Why? And you keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually, you'll get to the real internal desires, which typically are related to you want to feel loved. You want to feel acceptance. You want to change the world. You want whatever those things are that are internal to you. And so you share that, like, I wanted to make money, all these things, but I really wanted, man, I just wanted to help people. Man, I just wanted to get the respect of my wife or my kids or my dad or whatever that thing is. And when you share your internal desires, that's when people bond, because that's the same reason why your audience wants to go there as well, but they won't share it. They won't admit it. When you're willing to, you become vulnerable like that, that's when people will relate to you. Okay, so we talk about that. Then the next step here is the wall. You hit this wall on this journey. Now the wall, interestingly enough, if you look at this, the wall is the current opportunity that they're in. Okay, before you went on this journey, you were in an opportunity as well, right? So think about that. Like, what is the current opportunity your audience is stuck in? What's the vehicle that they're stuck in? Because that's the wall. Okay, and so you got stuck in the same wall they did probably, right? If your goal was to lose weight and you were stuck over here doing the Atkins diet, whatever, and you were stuck, like, that was the wall you hit, and it's probably the same wall or a very similar wall to what your audience has experienced at the same time. So you hit this wall. This is the vehicle. I wanted that result, but I couldn't because I was stuck here, right? And so because of that, I had to go on a journey because I could not accomplish what I wanted in this vehicle. I'm stuck. I can't get out. I can't get there. So you have to leave on a physical journey, leave the opportunity you're currently using to try to get that result because it's not working, and all of a sudden you start on this journey. And you start on this journey, and during this journey is where this happens. You have this epiphany. Boom. And that epiphany leads you to this new opportunity. I found that vehicle wasn't for me. Like, that wasn't the thing. I tried that. You've all tried it. It just didn't work for me or for you. But I tried this, and this is what happened. Okay? And so because of that, this is the new opportunity. I was so excited, but I was scared. Like, I don't know if it's going to work or not work. And you start freaking out. And so, okay, well, based on this new opportunity, I think it's the way. What's the plan you created? Okay, I have a plan. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to walk, and this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to get to that end result. And you create this plan. So the plan is taking you on this journey now. And if the plan ends like, I had an idea, I was going to make a bunch of money, and I did. Like, there's no emotion in that. The emotion is in the conflict. So as you get this plan, you're going to execute. You start going on this path, and then somewhere you hit conflict. Like, what was it? Like, what kept you from having the success you actually wanted? Like, what was that conflict for you? You talk about the conflict, and then after you get through that conflict, then you have two things. One is the journey of achievement. You achieved that thing. Can we pull that image back up on the slides? So number one, can we get the image back up here on the slides? Okay, number one, you experienced achievement. You achieved that thing. Maybe you didn't achieve it, like Lightning McQueen didn't achieve it, but you talk about the achievement you got, but then more importantly, you talk about the transformation, the fulfillment you got. And that's where people connect with you, because that's what they want as well. They don't really care about the achievement. They care about the transformation. And when they see the transformation you had, that's what gets them to believe. That's what knocks the domino down. That's when, like, wow, that's the path. He's been there. He understands where I've gone. And that's what gets them to want to follow you. Okay, now I broke this down into some questions that are inside your book, so you can read through these, it'll make it easier. But it's basically, there's 8 questions. The backstory, your desires, the wall, the epiphany, the plan, the conflict, achievement, and transformation. Okay, so the first thing is the backstory. So I had these questions because like when I'm trying to tell these stories, a lot of times I'll go off on tangents and 5 minutes later I find I'm clear over here and I missed the whole story, right? So I have one of these on my desk I look at so I can remember I stay within the boundaries of good story structure. So I'll say, so if you look at this as the backstory, what is your backstory that gives us a vested interest in your journey? So you ask that question and then you tell the people your backstory about why they should care about you. Okay, number 2, what were the desires? What is it you were trying to accomplish? And then what were the external struggles you were afraid of? And then what was the internal? What was the real reasons? Okay? Then what was the wall? Boom, what was the wall? The problem that you hit within your current opportunity that would not allow you to get that thing you wanted? Okay? And then boom, what was the epiphany that you experienced that led you to this new opportunity? After you have the epiphany, what was the plan you created to go and get that thing? So you create the plan, all right, this is where I'm going, you create the plan, you start going on this thing, and then as you're going forward that thing, what's the conflict that you hit, that you get stuck in? You all hit conflict, we're like, I can't get through this thing, and after you figure out the conflict and you succeed, and what was the achievement you had? What was the end result you achieved? And then number 9 there is what was the transformation that you experienced? And that's the path. All right, how many of you guys want to hear me do an Epiphany Bridge story following that script? Yeah? You gotta be more excited than that or I'm just gonna go home. All right. Okay, all right, some of you guys have heard this story before. And it's interesting, before I tell a story, I was planning on doing a whole session on this topic, but events always change and tweak. How many of you guys have had a chance to go through the perfect webinar process? Okay, so just those who've gone through, if you haven't gone through it, and this part will make more sense, just really quick, I want to show you guys a really cool thing. If you look at the perfect webinar, if you look right here, there's the one thing, and then there's 3 secrets. If you look at how I do the webinar, it's basically, outside of the stack and the close, it's me telling 4 Epiphany Bridge stories. My first story is my origin story. I always spell it one wrong. I hope I got that right. The first one's the origin story that I tell about the thing. And sometimes that's enough to get people to buy whatever it is you are. And then typically what happens after you tell the origin story about why this vehicle is the thing that you chose, why I chose funnels, why I chose ketosis, why I chose whatever, fill in the blank for you, that's the first story I tell. And normally what happens is that some people will buy immediately, but then some are like, that's cool, and they're like, but what if? And all of a sudden they start having these false beliefs come up. Okay, and belief number 1 is typically about the vehicle. Number 2 is about their internal beliefs. Number 3 is about their external beliefs. And all I'm doing in each one of these as well is I'm telling an Epiphany Bridge story about why I believe this vehicle is the right vehicle. And then I tell them an Epiphany Bridge story about why I believe that internally I was able to do it and why they can do it. And over here, the external things. That's kind of going deeper. I could spend 2 hours on this part alone, but I just wanted to share that for those who are doing the webinar to understand that's how it fits in. There's an Epiphany Bridge story that's your origin story. There's an Epiphany Bridge story about the vehicle, the internal, and the external. If you go through the perfect webinar, that'll make more sense. But that's the key. It's basically 4 stories, and then I move into the stack and the closes. And it's really, really powerful. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and tell you guys an Epiphany Bridge story the best I can. All right, so it starts with a backstory. So I'm gonna embarrass my wife, she's here, so I hope she's not gonna kill me. But, so my backstory started, this is 15 years. We're gonna be married 15 years this summer, which is amazing. Is that cool? Yes. And so our first year after we got married, I had never had a job before. She was working to support me and her and everybody. Like it was amazing. And after we first got married, we had a little bit of credit card debt we wrapped up, and we're like, we couldn't move forward because we were stuck. And so we sat down and we're like, if we're gonna be successful and like we wanna have a home someday and all the things we want to have kids some days, like we have to figure out how to get out of debt. And so this is a picture we took in the very first duplex we were renting, and it's a picture of her and me cutting up our credit cards. And look at how much of a dork I am. Can you imagine she married me? Like, it's pretty bad, huh? Anyway, and so we were sitting there, and it was just like, it was really like, we were joking, making fun about the whole crying thing, but it was an emotional thing, like, oh, like, I know we want like we want to like have a family and kids and all these amazing things, but we can't because all these things we're working aren't working. So we have to stop like what we're doing. We have to cut up our credit cards and figure out a different way, right? And so my desire was like, I got to figure out as a man, like, how do I support her? I'm wrestling in college. So I didn't have the ability to get a job. I'm like, I have desires to help her. And I want to make money. That was my first goal. But if you want to be completely honest, it wasn't just I wanted to make money. I knew that after we first got married, I was going to wrestling practice and having fun. I was going to school and having fun. I'd come home at night, and she'd worked an entire day during the day, and at night she would go and she'd serve tables at night to people to have the money so we could pay our rent and so we could eat. And honestly, as like a new husband, to know that your wife's working 2 jobs while you're having fun, like living your dreams, is hard. And I felt guilty and I felt bad. I was like, oh, like I want to be part. I want to help in this relationship, right? And so I had some desires, like I got to figure this thing out. And I couldn't get a job because I wanted to wrestle. Like that was my thing. I couldn't quit wrestling, so I had to figure out some other way to make money. And so I started this journey to go out there. And initially, I started making this little website. Some of you guys have heard this story before. We live in Boise, Idaho. And if you've been to Boise, there's like potatoes on the ground everywhere. That's not actually true, but a lot of people think it is. But one spring break, one of my buddies, this is Nate Plone, he was on the wrestling team with me, and we were the only 2 married guys on the wrestling team. So for spring break, all of our buddies were down in Wendover and wherever, gambling and having fun, and we had our wives working, and we were the unemployed husbands who felt guilty. So we didn't go on party. We sat at home and we're like, well, what should we do all day? He's like, I don't know, I want to make a potato gun. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I'm in. Let's do it. So we spent the whole week like making potato guns, had so much fun shooting potatoes that weekend. And I have a longer version of the story I can tell, but I don't have time. So anyway, we're shooting potato guns, having the time of our lives, and then went back to school the next week. And then I remember after that, I'd been learning about internet marketing at the time, and I talked to Nate. I was like, hey, I think I want to try to sell something online, and I want to sell potato gun plans. And I did some research, and I looked at the time, there were 18,000 searches a month for the keyword potato gun plans, and nobody was selling that. So I'm like, cool, I can sell potato gun plans. I'm gonna be the potato gun plan guy. So I talked to Nate, I convinced him to go and film a DVD with me. So we went out and we filmed the DVD. Last year at Funnel Hacking Live, I gave everybody, how many of you guys watched the DVD after you went home? Like 2 of you guys. It was so cool. I was such a nerd. Anyway, so we built this thing, and it was awesome. We were having some fun with it, and we started selling it, and then we hit this wall. Okay, something really, really bad happened. Google slapped me. Whoopsh. I was selling it on Google. I think at the time we were spending about $10 to $15 a day, and we were making 1 or 2 sales a day. So we're making 30 to 50 bucks a day. And it was like the greatest thing in the world. And all of a sudden Google slapped me. And it was like, it was done. I couldn't make any money anymore. And I was stuck in this vehicle. I'm like, well, I guess that was the .com bust. I missed the bubble, right? And I'm like, I gotta start paying attention to school again. Dang it. I was so mad, right? And then, I had this epiphany. In fact, it wasn't an epiphany. One of my friends called me. He was like, Russell, and at the time he had a similar business to mine. He had a bunch of these little websites, and he was selling them. He said, look, all my websites stopped working because Google changed the algorithm and prices went up. He's like, but I started doing this thing. I started adding upsells to my pages. He said that what I found is about 20, 30% of people who bought the first product started buying the upsell and completely changed my business. I'm back on Google. We're making money again. I was like, are you serious? So I went back to my old potato gun DVD. I found a guy in northern Idaho who actually made potato guns and did a deal with him where he drop shipped potato guns to people who bought my plans. We set up an upsell, had my very first upsell in place, and we started making money. And I was like, I'm back, like we're back in business. And I was so excited that my little potato gun business, I was spending $20 or $30 a day, and I was making like $100 a day. And I was like, I'm the richest kid on campus right now. This is amazing, right? It was so cool. And so because of that, I devised this plan. I was like, okay, I did it in potato gun markets, like where else can we do it? And so my slightly evil plan was to do this 1,000,000 times. And so we did it in the weight loss market. We did it in the speed reading market. We did it in baby sign language. We did it in apps. We did it with couponing, which by the way is one of the hardest markets ever. Don't sell things to people who are couponers. They naturally do not want to buy things. We did a seminar, a couponing seminar, and we handed out $1 certificates for ranch dressing, and there were 2 75-year-old women in the front seat fighting over coupons. I was like, they're not going to give us any money. They're fighting over dollar coupons. Anyway, horrible market, but we actually figured out a way to make those guys buy, which was insanely cool. We tried it in network marketing, tried it all sorts of places, and it was amazing. We were launching funnel after funnel after funnel after funnel. In fact, we launched 12 new companies in 1 year. I thought it was so smart, but it was horrible. And so that's when I hit this conflict. I realized, look, for me to keep launching these little funnels, like I have to have a designer, a programmer, a copywriter, and then be taking like 8 to 10 people. Like that was the problem. For me to get one little funnel live, I'd have an entire staff of people. It was costing me anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a month as it kept growing, and it got harder and harder and harder, and we couldn't do it anymore. And luckily that time I had this friend named Todd Dickerson, and he flew to Boise, and we were hanging out one day in front of a whiteboard, and he said, what if we create something so that I could quit making you a new funnel every single week? I was like, is it really that bad? He's like, yeah, we do the same funnel every week. I don't want to do it anymore. What if we made this thing and we could make a website builder? We could just like have the templates and put things in place. I was like, that sounds awesome. And so we started building this thing that became ClickFunnels. We met this guy named Dylan. He came out, he had this editor, he had this thing. We started putting those things together. And soon we had this amazing program where I could actually build funnels by myself. I didn't need a tech team of 50 or 100 people. And the coolest thing in the world happened. I was able to achieve my dreams. I was able to make a business, make money. My wife was able to not have to work. We had a bunch of kids, but the coolest thing for me, see that picture of my kids? I got to hang out with my kids now. My kids are building funnels with us. How cool is that? Like, it's the most amazing experience in the world, and it's completely transformed my life. And that is the Epiphany Bridge script. Cool. All right.